Good day everyone, it's Alkali Shepherd. This is the second part of my pivot table tutorial. Today I'll be showing us so many other things we can do with the pivot table, and this includes how we can summarize values using the pivot table, also how we can show these values if at all we don't want it to look like the way it is actually looking. We can actually explore the pivot table design tab and also the pivot table analyze tab today. We definitely cannot do everything within the pivot table, but I assure you I'll be showing you things that will help you in your day-to-day activities as long as data is concerned. Alright then, so all I want from you is your perfect attention. There is nothing complicated. All I just want you to do is sit back, relax, and see how we can use these items for our day-to-day activities. Now the data you can actually see here is that of 5 different African countries that are actively involved in the production of certain products. Now, every information you can see here has to do with the transactions that has occurred for this particular product. Now, for the first row, you can see that in Kenya, a product Aquarius was manufactured and over 5,000 of crates of this particular product was made. And you can see the cost incurred here, and you can see the revenue they generated after selling this particular product to the consumers. And eventually, this is the profit they generated. So every row you can see within this data is a transaction for a particular product at a particular point in time. So let's see how we can manipulate this data to actually make sense out of so many things we can see here. So first of all, we shall be seeing how we can summarize values using the pivot table. Now I'll just create the pivot table out of this data. So Control A, then come to insert. So when I hit on pivot table, you can see I have the option to put this in a new worksheet, or I can put this in an existing worksheet. So I just select existing worksheet because I actually have a sheet which will be designated to this particular purpose. So selecting this sheet, select any cell, then I enter. Now you can see I've actually created a pivot table for myself. So now the first thing I'll be doing is I want to see the profits gained for every product in each country. Let me come again. Profits gained for every product in each country. So how do I go about that? Quickly drag products to rows, then drag country to columns. Now all you've done is you've said let the countries form the columns and let the products form the rows. But I said I want to see the profits gained for every country, for every product in each country, which means I have to locate the field that contains the profit information. So on locating this, I drag to values and you can see what has been produced. Now you can see over 1 million naira was made as profit for selling Aquarius in Egypt. You can see every other cell produces an information also. Now, at the top left here, you can see what this says is sum of profits. This wasn't here before, but on dragging the profit to values, sum of profits automatically appeared. This is because by default, Excel tends to sum the values within that column, right? So all I'm saying is profit contains numerical values, right? So on dragging profit to values, Excel tend to what sum those values all together. And this applies to every other column that contains numerical values. But this can change. What if you don't want to see the sum? What if you actually want to see the average? You actually want to see probably the maximum amount within those sums. What if you actually want to see the minimum amount within those sums? How do you go about that? That is where the idea of summarizing values by comes to play. So let me show you something. Now select a cell whereby there is an amount, then right click on it, then come down to summarize values by. Now you can see different ways you can summarize a value. You can summarize by count, you can summarize by average, you can summarize by maximum, summarize by minimum, summarize by product. These are different ways you can see your values. By default, it comes as sum. So I'll quickly duplicate this pivot table and show us a scenario where we can decide to use count. Control C. I should just close this field list. Then I paste somewhere around here. Good. Come back to pivot table analyze, then bring out your field list. Now you can see I have my field list back. So I just take out some, I should just leave this like this. So the next thing I want to do is I want to see the total number of transactions for every product in each country. Don't forget, every row represents a particular transaction, right? So for the product Aquarius, you can see so many transactions occurred for the product Aquarius. For Chivita also, if you bother to scroll down, you see that Chivita also has so many transactions that are attributed to it. So I want to see the total number of transactions that has occurred for every product, right? So how do we now do that? So I take out whatever I have within the values, and this is what you should now. So like I said, I want to see the total number of transactions for every product in each country. All I just need to do is drag products to values. Now, do not forget the column product contains text values, right? Which is the names or the labels of the products, which includes Chivita, Aquarius, Fanta, and so on and so forth. Excel cannot sum up text, so all Excel does is gives us the count. So on counting this, you can see we have the number of transactions that has occurred for every product. So this is telling us that we've had 20 transactions for Aquarius in Egypt. This is telling us we've had 28 transactions for Aquarius in Kenya. But most times we tend to count those columns that contain text-based values. All right. So I duplicate this pivot table one more time and shows another way we can summarize our values by. Now, I want to be able to see the average revenue generated for every product. Now we're talking about revenue. So I take out the field I have in the values, then I locate my revenue. We are not interested in the sum. What we are interested in is the average revenue generated for every product. So select the cell that contains a value, that is a numerical value, right click on it, come to summarize values by, and select average. Now, every information you can see is the average value. Now, this is saying the average of the revenue that was generated by Aquarius for Egypt is 828,092 naira. If we come down here, you can see this is saying the average revenue that was generated for Coca-Cola in Kenya is over 1 million naira. So let's duplicate this pivot table once more, and let's see another way we can utilize the summarizing values by option. I paste here, escape this. Now, I want to see the maximum amount of revenue generated for every product in each country. In the first pivot table, you can see we saw the sum of the profits, right? Now, the thing is, on duplicating this and pasting here, you can see we still have the average of whatever information we have here, right? Now, what I want to see is the maximum amount of revenue generated, which means all I'll have to do is right click, come to summarize values by, and pick maximum. Now you can see inside every transaction that has occurred for Aquarius in Egypt, this is the maximum amount of revenue that was generated at a particular point in time. Do not forget that why there are different transactions is because of the time. So Control C that and just paste somewhere around here. Right, you can decide to close this field list if at all you don't want to. Now I want to see the minimum cost incurred for every product in each country. Let me come again. Minimum cost incurred for every product in each country. Now I just select whatever cell as long as that cell contains a revenue value. Then I right click. Then I come to summarize values by. Then I select minimum. But this is just one way to always summarize our values by. Select the cell, come to pivot table analyze, then bring out your field list. Now, I said I want the minimum cost. So I should have actually taken this field out. Then I drag total cost to values. On dragging this gives me the sum of every cost. Now, all I want to do is I want to see the minimum value out of all the sums. So what I do is I come back here, then I left click. On left clicking, you can see this menu just comes out. Now select value field settings, and you can see you also have the options here also. So it all depends on how you want to go about it. So you can either decide to use this path, or you can use the other path I've been using. So let me just select minimum, then I okay. And now every information you can see here is the minimum amount, or is the minimum cost rather, that was incurred for every product in each country. Now these are ways we can make use of the summarizing values by. All right then, so let's quickly look at instances where we can decide to use the show values as. Control A this, come to insert, then pivot table. Select existing worksheet because I actually have a sheet designated for this purpose. Come to showing values as, then select any cell, enter. A pivot table has been created. Now the first thing I want to do is total cost incurred by every product in different quarters. I want to see the total cost incurred by every product in different quarters. Drag products to rows, drag date to columns. And you should have something like this. But I want to see the quarters. So I just take out year, take out date, and I should have something like this. Now you can see for every date, for all the dates we have, it spans across quarter one to quarter four. So let's just drag years to filters, just in case of you want to filter out the information for a particular year. So that whatever you want to see, whenever you want to see the information for a particular year, all you need to do is just filter out the information from here. You can see we have 2020 to 2022, right? All right, then, so let's proceed. Total cost, I said. So you locate the field which contains total cost, drag this to values, and you can see what we have. All right, so this is looking good. Move your cursor to the field you've dragged to values, then left click. Select the value field settings. Now you can see we have show values as here. So select this and move your cursor to this drop down at the far right. Hit on this and you can see all the options you have to show your pivot table as. Now, by default, it is set to no calculation. There are other ways you can express your values, which includes percentage of grand total, percentage of column total, percentage of row total, percentage of parent row total, percentage of parent column total, percentage of parent total, and so on and so forth. We definitely are not going to explore everything within this dialog box, but we are actually going to see more than enough we need for our day-to-day activities on our pivot table projects. So I close this first of all. Now there are some things we need to get familiar with. That is the grand total, the column total, and the row total. What are these values? How do you know them when you have a pivot table? Now, when you sum up all these values within this column, which is quarter one, they sum up to give you this value at the very bottom here. This value is what we call the column total. Now, all these values here are the column totals. If you sum up all these values within this column, they give you this value here. This is the column total for all these values here, right? So this is how you know the column total. While for the row total, when you sum up all these values within this row, they sum up to give you this value here. So all these values we have are the row totals for every row we have in this pivot table. Now, this point of intersection is the grand total. The grand total is the sum of all this, is the sum of all these values together. When you sum up all these values together, you get the grand total, which is this, right? All right, then. So now let's see how we can utilize the show values as option. So like I said, the show values as helps us express informations in percentages. So let's utilize the first option we saw. So I just right click and I come to show values as. Now you can see it's set at no calculation. Now I want to express them as the percentage of the grand total, which means it is going to be showing us the percentage composition all these values have in the grand total. Let me select this. Good. Now you can see all of the grand total is set at 100%. Now all these values here, they'll sum up to give you 100%. You can see when I highlighted everything on my bottom here, you can see at the sum area here, all the values I've highlighted are equal to 100%, which means that these are the percentages, or these are what they constitute out of the grand total, right? So it depends. Now, I actually wanted to see the total cost every product in each quarter constitute in the grand total, right? In percentages, and I've been able to achieve that, right? So this is just how it works. Now let's see how we can utilize the percentage of column total. Come to transactions, then insert a pivot table again. Select existing worksheet because I have a worksheet designated for this purpose. Select showing values as, then I just select this cell, then enter. So I want to see the total cost incurred for every product in different months of the year. So how do we do this? Quickly drag products to rows, then I drag date to columns. I don't want to see the years. I want to see the months, right? So right click, make sure you select any cell within this row that carries a year. Right click, then come to group. Good. Now I actually want only month. So deselect every other option and leave out only months. Then okay. Now you can see everything has been expressed in months. I just drag total cost to values. Now this is what I have. You can see the total cost that was incurred for Aquarius in the month of January. You can see the total cost that was incurred for Aquarius the month of February. And these values at the bottom are the column totals, while this one's here are the row totals. Then you can see we have our grand total here. Good. So all this being said, now I want to see how or what they constitute out of the column totals, not the ground total this time around. So I right click, then I come to show values as, then I select percentage of column total. Now, if you observe, all the column totals now equal 100%. Whatever column total you have here will equal 100%, while the percentages of these values based on the column total are now expressed. So you can see that from the month of January, for the month of January, the total cost incurred for Aquarius is 12.26% out of the total, that particular column. So let me duplicate this pivot table once more, Control C. Then I Control V like this. Good. So I bring out my field list, come to pivot table, analyze, then bring out field list. All right, then. So the next thing I'll be doing is I want to see the total revenue generated for every product in different quarters. Total revenue generated for every product in different quarters. So I take out everything I have, not everything actually, I just take out the field I have within values. Then I drag total revenue to values. And this is good. So, but I want to see for the quarters, not for the month. So select any cell that contains a month, right click on it, come to group, then select quarters and select months, then enter. Now you can see it is expressed in their quarters. So let's see the other option we will be exploring. So I just come to the field I've dragged to values and I left click. I select value field settings, come to show values as. This is another way to go about the whole thing if you don't want to have to right click and select show values as. So select this drop down. Then now I want to express as percentage of row total. We've done for the grand total. We've seen how it works. We've done for the percentage of column total and also seen how it works. Now let's see for the percentage of row total. Select this and OK. Now what did you observe? Every value you have in the row total has been made 100%. The sum of these values within the row will equal this value here. The sum of these values within this row should equal 100%. Now you can see how we express as percentage of row total. So you can see for the second quarter, all this is saying is in the second quarter, the total revenue generated for Aquarius is 26.63% out of the total revenue that was generated for Aquarius. You can see for Chivita in the quarter and the third quarter, this is saying out of the total revenue that was generated for Chivita in all four quarters, 18.75% is what the third quarter constitutes out of the 100% and so on and so forth. So it might look a little bit ambiguous, but this is just the idea. This is just the idea on how to express your values within your pivot table using the show values as. All right then. So let me duplicate this pivot table once more and let's see other options we can explore. So Control C this, then just Control V here, then escape. Good. So bring out our pivot table field list. Then I select this. Good. All right then. So let's see another option we can explore. So let's just drag countries to rows. Let's just leave it like this. So you can see we have the total revenue for every product generated for a particular quarter, broken down by the countries. Okay, so this is what we have. So let's say we want to utilize the percentage of parent total option in the show values as. So all you just need to do is select any of the cells that contain a numerical value, then right click, come to show values as. I can see percentage of parent total. Now, when you select this, you can see this dialog box just comes out asking base field country. By default, it has selected country. But if you click the drop down, you can see the other base fields you can use. But the base field I actually want to make use of in this scenario is the country. So I just let that be. Then I OK. Now you can see the 100% now become the values that are on the row of the countries. Now, when you sum up all these values below, when you sum up all these values below the 100%, it'll sum up to give you whatever is at the top here. Now, the sum of all these values here all these values like this were expressed based on this value. Same applies to other columns. When you highlight all this, you can see the sum up to give you 100%. All this is saying is in the second quarter, the revenue generated by couriers constitute 13.83% out of the total revenue that was generated for our couriers in the quarter two. So let's see some other stuff. We selected country to be our base field. What if we don't want country to be the base field? So when I right click this and I come to show values as, and I select percentage of parent total, let's try. So let's select product then and see how it goes. Good. Now you can see it converts all the values for products to 100%. This is looking awkward. You can't actually make any sense out of this because all this does is it converts every product value to 100%. And definitely this is not what we want to see. So I just right click back, come back to show values as, select percentage of row total, then I select my country. Let's select date and see what comes out of it. We select date and okay, what do you see? Basically converts every value within the columns to 100%. That is not how we want it to look like. So this is not the option we should be using this time around. So come back to percentage total, let's select country. I just duplicate this pivot table, Control C. Then I place this directly below this pivot table here, Control V. Good. I escape. All right then. So I just drag out country as quick as possible. Drag out country so we can have something like this. Make sure you right click, come to show values as and select no calculation. So we can have our values back. When you look carefully, when you look this column carefully, you can see that the highest amount is this one, which is over 36 million naira. You can see the next largest value is this one, which is over 17 million naira. You can see the next to this one is this, I believe, which is over 15 million naira. So why I'm actually stressing this is because of the next option which I'll be exploring has to do with the ranking. It has to do with the order from highest to the lowest or the lowest to the highest. So let's just see how the option works. When I right click, I come to show values as, then select rank smallest to largest. Then okay, let it be product, then enter. Good. Now all this has done is, since I selected rank from smallest to largest, it attributed, it gave the value of 1 to the most smallest value. So this is telling you that the smallest value in this particular column is that for Sprite, and the second smallest is that for Fanta. Not forget I selected rank from smallest to largest. So it tends to give the first value, which is the number one value, to the one with the smallest value for that particular column. You can see the third highest is Aquarius. You can see the third lowest is Aquarius because I told it to rank from smallest to highest. You can see the fourth highest is Schweppes. You can see the fifth highest is Chivita. And you can see the sixth highest is Coca-Cola, right? So this is just all it does. It helps you rank these values. I don't know where you might want to rank values in your pivot table, but if at all you ever think of it, this is how you go about that. Right then. So I just Control V this, right click, then come to show values as, then select rank largest to smallest. This time around, the reverse is the case. It gives the highest, gives the number one value to the most highest value. So select this, then enter. Good. Now you can see the first value now goes to Coca-Cola. You can see the second value now goes to Chivita. This tells you that the highest value in this column is Coca-Cola because I asked it to rank from the largest to the smallest. I never know when you might want to use this, but if at all you want to use this, always know you have that option. Okay, so what will just happen is let's quickly insert a pivot table out of this data. So insert, then come to select existing worksheet, then come to pivot table design. Now we are going to be seeing the design tab for pivot table. That is, okay, let's just select any cell, then enter. Now on creating this pivot table, you can see this contextual tabs just pulled out from nowhere. So this is the tab we are going to be exploring, which is the design. So select that and see the tools you have within the design tab. All right then. So like I've said, it is contextual. You must have a pivot table before you can have this. Okay, so let's drag country to rows and drag product to rows. All right then. Let's drag date to columns, then drag profit to value. Now you can see what we have from here to here. Every information is for Egypt. Same applies to the other areas we have within this pivot table. So now let's come to the subtotals as quick as possible. Now look at the options we have. Do not show subtotals as the first one. This one says show all subtotals at bottom of group. This one says show all subtotals at the top of group. Now currently we have all our subtotals at the top of the group because this is one group, and you can see first quarter, you can see the subtotal at the top here. You can see their subtotal at the top here. For the second quarter, you can see for the second quarter in Egypt, you can see their subtotal at the very top here. This is where you can actually play around the subtotals. So now this says the first one says do not show subtotals. Now when I select this, you can see all the subtotals just kind of disappear. So it might be that you actually don't want to see the subtotals and the pivot table you created. I don't know if I'm making any sense. So if you actually don't want the subtotals being displayed, you have an option to take that out. So after that, let's just select the subtotals once more and see something. This one says show all subtotals at bottom of the group. So when I select this, you can see we have the subtotals, but this time around they are being shown at the bottom of the group. At first, we had them being shown at the very top. But this time around, you can see we have them being shown at the bottom of the group. It's all a matter of how you want it to be presented. So when I select the cell, I come to subtotals, and I select show all. So that let's select this one that says show all subtotals at top of group and see how it is. Now you can see it goes back to the default way it came. So by default, Excel is going to place the subtotals at the very top for you. If at all you don't want it presented that way, then you can play around the subtotals icon and see what you have for yourself. Now, the next thing we have is the grand totals. And when you click this, you can see this says offer rows and columns. So before now, I explained how these grand totals look. So you can see all the informations we have here are the row totals. From here down to here, these are the row totals, while all these values here are the column totals. So now this helps us on and off this grand total. So when I click this, you can see this first one says off for rows and columns. When I select this, what did you observe? You can see the row totals are all gone. When I scroll down to the very bottom, you can see the column totals are also gone. This is how one way you can take them out. What if you just want, what if you want both of them on? What if you want to see the row totals and also the column totals? Select this one and you can see they are back. When I scroll down, you can also see I have my column total. Let me come back and explore other options. When I come here, you can see we have the on for rows only. What if you only want the row totals without having the column totals? When you select this, you can see we still have our row totals. When I scroll down, you can see we do not have the column totals again. So I can scroll back up and explore the last option. Selecting this, you can see we have on for columns only. When you select this, what did you observe? The row totals are all gone. When you scroll down, you can now see we have the column totals present. So this is just one way you can. This is just the way you can actually on and off your grand totals if you want them, depending on if you want them or you don't want them. Okay, so the next thing which I'll be exploring is the report layout. Now, the report layout basically helps you present the pivot table in different forms, right? So the first one includes the showing compact form, showing outline form, showing tabular form, repeat all item labels, do not repeat item labels, and so on and so forth. But let's select the showing outline form and see. Now, selecting the showing outline form, you can see it kind of created another column which says product. So instead of the product being directly under the country, it created a column for it separately. Now come back to report layout and select showing compact form, brings this back to the default setting. So the default setting we have is showing compact form itself. The default setting we have, the default way the pivot table is created is the compact form itself. But if you want to see it in showing outline form, all you just have to do is select it this way, and it creates another column for the product for you instead of stacking the product directly under the countries. Now select the report layout once more and select show in tabular form. Now on doing this, you can see how it just kind of rearranges it. This time around, you can see it brings the subtotals at the very bottom. Who knows when you might want to present your data this way, but just know that you always have the options to structure your pivot table depending on how you want it to be presented. Come back to the report layout, then select repeat all item labels. You can see all it did was to repeat all those items. We know that this area all belongs to Egypt. So instead of just having it at the very top, it decided to repeat all the items for you to help your eyes not being strained enough. right? So who knows when you might want to use this. But all I'm saying is you always have this option to repeat the item labels if you want to. Come back to report layouts and you can see do not repeat item labels and all this is gone. So these are various ways you can play with the report you have. You understand? These are different ways you can play around the layout you have. So let me just come back to report layouts and select the compact form. This is how it comes by default. Okay then. So for this other one, this one says blank row. This one says insert blank line after each item, remove blank line after each item. So let's insert blank line after each item and see. What did you observe? A blank line has been inserted here. Another black line has been inserted here. So these are ways you can insert a blank line after items you've listed in your pivot table. So this actually looks better to the eye. It kinds of reduces the compactness we have before now. Come back to blank rows and remove the blank line, and you can see that has gone. So this is just one thing we can do. So for the pivot table styles, there are so many styles here you can choose for your pivot table. This is a default style. This is a default design. This is the default pivot table style that comes with the pivot table. There are so many others you can play around here. You can see we have this one, we have this, you can select this one, and you can see your pivot table style has changed. So these are just options to help you design your pivot table or present your pivot table in a more pleasing way. So I can select this one and you can see my pivot table is looking beautiful. I can select any of the styles I have here and present it to whoever is consuming the report or that. And you can see this pivot table style options. These are options for the pivot table styles. When we uncheck this one, what did you observe? You can see there is no color for the row headers. On selecting this, you can see that you can see the the row headers just basically got darker, right? When you select the when you deselect the column headers, you can see how that went. Obviously, these are the column headers. So on checking this box, you can see a color was added to the column headers. For the row headers, when you deselect, you can see these are the row headers. On deselecting it, you can see the color just left. On checking the box back, you can see the colors came back. So quickly come to transactions, then insert a pivot table out of this data, select pivot table, then select existing worksheet, then come to pivot table analyze, then insert a pivot table here, then enter. Good. So let's just quickly drag country to rows, then you can drag revenue, total revenue to values, then you can also drag product columns. Let's have it this way. Okay, then. So you can see this is the pivot table analyze tab. And let's see how we can play with some of these things here. I'm sure we're already familiar with these ones. We've seen how we can take out our field list from the pivot table analyze, and we've seen how we can insert it back, right? How we can take out the buttons also. We've seen how we can insert the buttons. We've seen how we can take out the field headers, bring back the field headers. So these are ways we can actually use the pivot table analyze. Also, another thing is we can add charts from the pivot table analyze. If at all you want to plot a chart out of this pivot table, you have the option here. When you select pivot table chart, you can see we have so many charts we can plot. And selecting this one, okay, let's just pick this one and say, okay, that's the column chart. And you can see we've plotted a bar chart. We've plotted bar charts for this particular pivot table. I can just quickly delete it. All right then. So come back to the pivot table analyze. Good. So that's another way you can use the pivot table analyze. You can see this tool. And you can see you have recommended pivot tables. We select this. This shows you certain reports you might want to make out of the data you have. So this one is telling you sum of profit by country. This one is telling you sum of product country. This one is telling you count of profit and average. So these are just recommendations, right? So it's possible you have no idea of the analysis you want to carry out. So these recommended pivot tables are just like they are previews, kind of. They are previews to show you what you might want to achieve and help you determine or help you be assertive on the analysis you're about to carry out. So you can always come here to see the recommendations you have, what kind of pivot table you want to create out of your data. Close this. Now you can see we have this group that says action. Now come back to select. Now you can select the entire pivot table from here. Good. You can move the pivot table if you want. You can see this one begins at A2. This present pivot table begins at A2. Let's bring it to J2 and okay. Now what did you see? You comfortably moved your pivot table towards the right. Let's just Control Z and I leave this like this. So come back to the pivot table, select the pivot table, analyze. Now you can see you can change the source data. You can change data source. If at all the data in the transaction, if at all another sheet was created and a fresh transaction data was brought in, and you probably want to refer this particular pivot table to that data, you can do that from here. All you just need to do is select this, select change data source. Good. So it brings you back to this range. So all you just have to do is clear out this range and select the new range of data you have, and your pivot table is updated and all that. But I don't want this, so I just okay, just Control Z, enter. Good. So this one way you can. So this is the way you can change your data source. You can refresh. And the thing about pivot table is it is quite automated. You always have a data source. Let's assume that more informations are being added. If I come back to transaction, you can see we have our data. So let's assume that data is being added from time to time in this particular sheet. You definitely want your information to reflect on the pivot table you have. That is where the idea of the refresh comes to play. So whenever you have a new data added to the data source, all you just need to do is come here and refresh. When you do that, the information will be populated, and you can now see it reflect in the pivot table you have here. Maybe I'll be creating a video subsequently to show us how we can add data to a data source and see how it reflects the pivot table subsequently. All right then. So this is just so you can see we can insert a slicer. Now a slicer is basically a filter. So let's just select this. Now you can see on hitting insert slicer, it gives us all the fields we have in our data source. So it's basically telling you out of what field do you want to create a slicer. So let's say out of the products. Then we enter. Now on doing that, you can see a slicer has been formed. Now let's say we only want to see information for Aquarius. On selecting this, you can see how everything has been filtered out and left, and now we are left with only Aquarius. If I want to see just for Coca-Cola, I select Coca-Cola like this. And you can see every information has been hidden and only that of Coca-Cola is being brought out. So Control Z, and we have. So I can just delete the slicer. Good. Come back to pivot table analyze. Like so you can see you have a pivot table icon here. Now this is where you change the name of the pivot table. So if you want to call this pivot table, if you're very cumbersome with designing dashboards, you really know the importance of naming your pivot tables, right? But even you're not creating dashboards, there's a possibility you might want to create a model, right? I want to create a model, you might want to create relationships with this pivot table and other pivot tables. You endeavor to name this pivot table because if you don't want to be confused when carrying out this relationship processes. So you can just call this let's say Shepherd. This is just a name I'm giving. But when doing yours, make sure you give it reasonable names. Or better still, I can just call this total revenue. Total revenue. Then I enter. Good. I've successfully named my pivot table. And that is just the way we can play around the pivot table analyze. There's one more thing, the field settings. So when I just select this field settings, you can see it brings me back to this show values and show values by and show values at. You can come to number format, select number format, and this gives you various ways to format the numbers you have within the pivot table. So on selecting that, you can see this just brings this dialog box to you. So you can always play around the currencies, play around accounting, play around the dates and all that, depending on the information the column carries and all that. So when you come to currency, you can see you can change your currency to so many other so many other currencies. You can change it to Russian currency. And when I click OK, you can see all the information within my pivot table has been converted to the Russian currency. So that is just the way you can play with the number format and what have you. So I guess this should be the end of the pivot table tutorial part 2. And please endeavor to like and subscribe to the channel.